What is up, guys, and welcome to the last in what is going to be the main series of Learn Global War 1936 videos. I'm sure at some point I'm going to have to append some videos at the end to fix some corrections or things I forgot, but for now this is intended to be the last video in this series. And as I've mentioned, this video is going to be all about facilities. Alright, let's go. Okay, starting off here first, we're going to have our factories. And these come in three varieties: major, medium, and minor. I mentioned in the place units phase that your major factory can drop 5 units per turn, your medium can drop 3 per turn, and your minor can drop 1 unit per turn, which is basically the main functionality of these guys. They can just drop units every turn. I also mentioned in the strategic bombing video that they have a maximum amount of damage they can take via strategic bombing. So this major guy can sustain 20 damage, and for each damage it has on it, its production capacity is reduced by 1. So you know, if you strategically bomb and you only get 1 damage, this guy can still produce 4 units. If you get anywhere from 5 to 20 damage, it is completely offline until you repair it down to below that 5 damage mark. Medium factories can take a total of 10 damage, and they are completely non-functional until all damage is repaired, so even 1 point of damage shuts it all the way down. And then your minor factories can only have 5 damage on them, and of course they are completely non-functional until all damage is repaired. I've mentioned a few times before that if your major factories are damaged at all, you do not receive your free tech roll from them, but you can repair that damage and then roll for your tech in the same turn. Another thing to note, your major and medium factories can only be built in home country, and if you capture a major or medium factory outside of your home country, they function as minors. So outside of your home country, you're not going to have great production unless you get improved factories. To build a minor factory outside of home country, the territory you choose has to have an IPP value, so it can't just be an empty zone, such as Punjab here. You could not build one here. And there has to be a supply path to the zone that you want to build it in, meaning basically you have to trace a Lend-Lease path from your home country to wherever you want to build this factory. Some other things to quickly note: a major factory takes 3 turns to build, a medium takes 2 turns to build, and your minor factories can be built in 1 turn. And of course they can be upgraded, so a minor can be upgraded to a medium and a medium can be upgraded to a major. Of course, to have a medium or major factory, you must be in your home country. And that's it, guys. You can see the costs of all these in your rulebook on page 53. It tells you the cost of upgrades and the cost to just build them. Alright, that's it for factories, guys. Let's move on to ports. Okay, and here I'm going to go over ports, dockyards, and shipyards all at the same time. The first thing to note is that white means minor, blue means major. So if you got your minor ports, for example, here, you've got your major ports right here. You've got a minor dockyard here and a major dockyard here. There are no shipyards on this part of the map, but you guys get the gist. And the way that these facilities work is basically the port is going to be the worst of the 3, and then the dockyard is going to be the next step up. So your dockyard is going to have all the functionality of a port plus some, and then your shipyards are going to have all the functionalities of dockyards and ports plus a little more. The functionality of your port is just to be a supply path, so whether that be for Lend-Lease or, you know, as I just mentioned, to build factories outside of home country. You can send and receive Lend-Lease and equipment through your port. Now your minor port is going to have a maximum of 3 IPPs that can move through it, and your major port can send and receive an unlimited amount. They can be placed in any zone regardless of supply path, so that's cool. And the only other difference between your major and your minor port is going to be that your major port gives ships and seaplanes +1 to their move. Now your dockyard is going to be a slight upgrade to your ports, retaining all the same functionality, meaning that your dockyards can be used to send and receive Lend-Lease, again up to a maximum of 3 IPPs for your minor and unlimited IPPs for your major. So as I mentioned, your dockyards retain all the functionality of your port, meaning that your major dockyard gives +1 movement to ships and seaplanes. The only difference between these two is that dockyards repair capital ships, meaning your minor shipyard here can repair 1 damaged ship per turn, and your major dockyard can repair 5 hits on your ships per turn. So if you had a heavy battleship that was damaged twice, it would take 2 turns for a minor dockyard to repair it, or 1 turn for a major dockyard to repair it, with 3 extra slots for other damaged ships. Now, repairing ships is going to take a little bit longer than you guys are used to from Axis and Allies Global 40. So for example, I've got this battleship. It moves into Sea Zone 85 here, and it conducts combat on its combat movement phase. It takes damage. Boop. So now it's damaged. And it sits here until your next turn. On your next turn, you go through all your combat phases, and then you get to your non-combat movement phases, and it moves up here to this dockyard. And then on your next turn, in your produce units phase, you declare that this ship is being repaired. And then in the place units phase of that turn, the damage comes off that ship and is repaired. So a ship has to be adjacent to a dockyard for the entirety of its turn. From the purchase units phase all the way to the place units phase, it has to be adjacent to this dockyard. So it takes an entire turn to repair ships, which is a long time, and it's a little bit more difficult to do in this game than it was in Axis and Allies Global 40, in which it was almost instantaneous. Okay, moving on to your shipyards. As I mentioned before, the shipyards are going to retain all the functionality of your dockyards and your ports. So they can receive lend-lease like a port, and they can also repair ships like a dockyard. In addition to that, your shipyards are where you're going to be producing ships. So your minor shipyards here can produce 1 non-capital ship per turn. That production slot is going to come from a factory via rail lines, as I outlined in the place units phase video. So producing a ship takes up a slot in both your shipyard and one of your factories via rail lines. Now, if you're repairing a ship with a shipyard, it takes up that production slot, so you can't both repair a ship and produce a ship with the same minor shipyard. With your major shipyards, you can repair or place 5 ships per turn, and you can place capital ships only at major shipyards. Now, of course, your major shipyard also gives +1 movement to seaplanes and ships. And all 6 of these facilities can be strategic bombed. And if they have any damage at all, they are not functional and must be repaired before use. They all have inherent anti-aircraft artillery, just like your factories. So they will fire back at any bombers coming in. And unlike your dockyards and your ports, your shipyards can only be placed connected to factories via railroads. Your minor shipyards can be placed outside of home country, but your major shipyards must be placed in home country and must be connected to a factory in home country via railroads. So, as I mentioned in one of my earlier videos, you cannot build a major shipyard anywhere in India because India is not home country. You can only build minor shipyards in India, and they have to be connected to this Calcutta factory by a railroad. And that's it for the naval facilities, guys. Let's move on to some of the other bases in this game. Now, these are 3 bases. You got your air base, your seaplane base, and your sub base. They can be built in any land zone that you own, regardless of supply path. So that's cool. Real quickly, your air bases, just like in Global 40, give your aircraft +1 movement. They also allow you to scramble up to 3 fighters into adjacent territories, as I've mentioned before. Your seaplane bases are very, very cheap. They only cost $2, and they give your seaplanes +1 movement and allow you to scramble up to 3 seaplanes into adjacent sea zones for naval combat. Lastly, you've got a submarine base, which again is very, very cheap. It costs $2, and it gives your submarines +1 movement, and that is all it does. Again, all 3 of these bases can be damaged, and cannot be used until repaired, but they all have inherent anti-aircraft, so I don't see a scenario where they get bombed very often. Okay, let's move on to the last couple things here. Up next, we've got fortifications, which are a very, very cool unit. They take 2 turns to build, so a purchase of 5 and then another purchase of 5, and they are built. So for example, I could build a fortification on this border between Maharashtra and southern India. If it was built here in Maharashtra, any attack coming from southern India into Maharashtra would be subject to fortification penalties. Those penalties being that fortifications provide 2 first strike shots out of 5 on the first round of combat, and they also give all defending land units a +2 to their roll on the first round, which is very, very good. Fortifications can't be bombed or damaged, so once they're there, they are there. But if the territory that a fortification is in is captured, that fortification is destroyed. There can only be 1 fortification per border, but you can have multiple per land zone. For example, in Maharashtra here, you have a fortification on the border of southern India, the border to Haryana, the border to Punjab, and the border to southern Iran, but only 1 per each of those borders. In addition, islands are special fortification zones, meaning that just building 1 fortification on the island protects the whole island, as well as cities. Just building a fortification in a city protects the city from all directions. Lastly, fortification bonuses are not cumulative. So I know that if you're in a city, your infantry class units get +1 to their defense. That is not cumulative. So if you've got a fortification, they get +2 on their first round of combat, and then after that, they get the normal +1 for being in a city. Okay, moving on to coastal artillery. Coastal artillery are another cool unit which are put in a land zone adjacent to any sea zone. And coastal artillery function the same as fortifications in that they protect the entirety of a city and the entirety of islands, with the exception of British Malaya, the Crimea, Gibraltar, and Panama, which also function as islands, meaning that if you have a fortification or a coastal gun in any of those 4 territories, it is protected from all sides, similar to cities or islands. Now, coastal artillery are built in 1 turn. They cost $6, and you can build multiple coastal artillery on 1 border, which is cool. What happens is when you are being amphibiously assaulted, your coastal artillery gets up to 3 shots at all bombarding ships and naval transports. So if somebody's coming in here to Calcutta with an amphibious assault and they've got a battleship and a transport, this coastal gun will get 2 shots, 1 for the battleship, 1 for the transport, and they hit at a 3. So it's basically like an anti-aircraft artillery for amphibious assault. The attacking player gets to choose casualties as normal. So with this battleship and with the transport, if you hit one of these coastal artillery shots, that player is probably just going to damage his battleship, and that'll be good. And the last unique thing about coastal artillery is here at narrow crossings. If any ship passes through here, coastal artillery can take shots at them as they pass through these zones. Again, coastal artillery may not be damaged by strategic bombing, and they are removed if the territory is ever captured. Last thing I've got for you guys are rails. Rails can be built on the map between 2 territories, and that just extends all the rails in a given territory. So what you could do is you could build one on this border here, and now all these rails in Maharashtra are connected to southern Iran. Easy peasy. Rails cost 2 to build on normal terrain, but if on either side of the border there is a terrain, so such as these mountains here, the rail costs 4 to build. So this one would be 4. If you built a rail here, it would be 2. Rails, any rails on the map, including the ones that start on the map, can be bombed and do not have inherent anti-aircraft artillery. So they can be bombed almost at will, in which case you would put a damaged rail marker on there, meaning it cannot be used. Rails in normal terrain can only take 1 point of damage. Rails in mountain terrain can take 2 points of damage. Alright, and that is all I got for you guys. I hope these videos helped. Let me know if you have any questions or if you have any ideas for some appendix videos I can make. And I will see you guys next time.